22 players, 2 goals and 1 ball. Simple. You know what isn't simple? An island where every kick of the ball ends up tangled in centuries of political history, religious tension, Cold War ideology, and the occasional UN peacekeeping mission. Why oh why did I decide to do a video on Cypriot football? Okay, here we go. This all starts with, surprise surprise, the British. Having acquired Cyprus from the Ottoman Empire in the late 1800s, and later a colony in the 1920s, the British were quick to introduce all the hallmarks of proper empire building to the island, including, of course, football, the popularity of which boomed quicker than the island's donkey population. By the early 1900s, football was being played in schools across Cyprus, and clubs soon followed, such as Neos Ionos Trikomou in 1900, Northosis Famagusta in 1911, and Apoel in 1926. However, football doesn't exist in a vacuum. If it did, it'd be a lot more difficult to play with the lack of gravity and all, though it'd be a lot more like Blitzball from Final Fantasy X. In the 1920s, Cypriots were entertaining the idea of enosis, the union of Cyprus with Greece. It was backed by much of the island's majority Greek Cypriot population. For the minority Turkish Cypriot population of the island, this wasn't so appealing. Football clubs became extensions of this national drama. Apoel, the football club of Greek Cypriots in Nicosia, made no secret of its nationalist leanings. The club's founding members were unapologetically pro-enosis. British authorities, as you might expect, were wary of such nationalist overtones. After Greek Cypriots staged anti-colonial riots in 1931, the British imposed strong measures. Political parties were banned, and even public display of Greek flags or anthems was curtailed. In this climate, sports became one of the few outlets for national sentiment. Turkish Cypriots, meanwhile, also formed clubs, like the Nicosia Turkish Club in 1907, which would later become Çetinkaya Türk SK in 1930. For a brief period, both Greek and Turkish Cypriot clubs coexisted. The Cyprus Football Association was formed in 1934 to regulate the sport and organise the island's sole football league, the Cypriot First Division Championship. The Cypriot Championship was initially an arena where Greek and Turkish Cypriot teams actually competed together. The inaugural 1934 to 1935 season consisted of 7 Greek Cypriot sides and 1 Turkish Cypriot side. For a while, this dynamic worked. Clubs like Apoel and AL Limassol were early league staples, and in 1951, Çetinkaya Türk SK even won the league title, becoming the first, and only as it turns out, Turkish Cypriot side to lift the league trophy. However, this was as good as it ever got. At the time, Cyprus was very much at a high simmer. The 1931 anti-colonial uprising had already raised tensions, and after World War II things got worse. Britain was losing its grip on the empire, Greece was in the middle of a brutal civil war between monarchists and communists, and the Cold War was beginning to seep into every corner of the globe, including Cyprus. Cyprus's Greek community split along similar political lines. Tensions between these camps steadily grew, and oddly, it was within Cyprus's sports teams that these two ideologies played out. Left-identifying athletes began to suspect that the sports establishment, often led by local notables, schoolmasters, or businessmen with nationalist and conservative leanings, were trying to sideline them. In 1948, the Cold War in Greece turned into a very hot war for Cypriot sports. The Hellenic Amateur Athletic Association sent out a demand to all Cypriot sports clubs: publicly declare your national loyalty and pledge allegiance to the right-wing Greek government. Nearly every established sports club and known right-wing athlete in Cyprus obliged. But a handful of holdouts refused, saying sports and politics shouldn't mix, effectively outing themselves as politically red. The punishment came swiftly. Clubs banned pesky woke lefties, and across the land a clear message was sent. Leftists were no longer welcome in mainstream sports. In May 1948, Apoel, the most prominent club on the island, sent out a telegram pointedly praising the spirit of Greek unity and hoping to an end to the rebellion. In the not-so-coded language of the time, this was seen as a massive middle finger to the left. For many athletes, this was the last straw. Leftist players and their sympathisers decided that if Apoel and other clubs wanted a purged, purely nationalist football association, they would form their own. And thus, Ammonia Nicosia was born. Green instead of blue, left instead of right. Their fans didn't just want attractive, sexy football, they wanted to seize the means of production and all that. This ideological divide played out all over the island. In a matter of months, Cypriot football was cleaved into two camps, mirroring almost exactly the right versus left divide of the Greek Civil War. The new leftist clubs created their own federation in December 1948, named the Cyprus Amateur Football Federation, or KEPO. Obviously the English acronym would be CAF, but I won't butcher the Greek name as I wouldn't want a permanent ban from the Greek-speaking world. Amateur was a bit of a take, to be honest. They were hardly pub teams. They organised full national championships and cups, and their matches drew thousands of enthusiastic fans, often outshining and outdrawing CFA games. Fans flocked to CAF matches not only out of political solidarity, but because it was pretty good. It helped that the leftist clubs framed themselves as people's teams, open to any talented player, regardless of political creed, though in practice they certainly skewed to the left. Meanwhile, the CFA's league suffered from an absence of many of their star players who had joined the new clubs. Both federations soon realised that the split was unsustainable. Running two separate national governing bodies on a small island led to scheduling headaches, a diluted talent pool and training cone shortages. Probably. By the early 1950s, calls grew for reconciliation. Nearly all the top players, regardless of politics, wanted one unified league again. In the summer of 1953, the breakthrough came. KEPO's leading clubs jointly applied for re-entry into the Cyprus Football Association. The CFA agreed, probably just relieved that they weren't hemorrhaging any more players. And with that, both federations once again merged. The Cyprus Amateur Football Federation dissolved in 1953. Its mission essentially accomplished. The leftist clubs and players had won their right to compete on equal footing. For a moment, it seemed like Cypriot football might actually become unified. But this is Cyprus we're talking about, and when one crisis ends, another begins. By the 1950s, the Cypriot people were super duper done with British rule. In 1955, a Greek Cypriot insurgency known as EOKA launched a campaign to boot out the British and pursue enosis. Unification with Greece, remember. Turkish Cypriots opposed it. This hardened ethnic divisions. The overwhelmingly Greek Cypriot CFA banned Turkish Cypriot clubs from playing Greek Cypriot stadiums, and thus the Turkish Cypriot sides left to form the Cyprus Turkish Football Association in 1955. Çetenkaya, once league champions, helped found a separate league with 5 other clubs. From here on, Cypriot football existed in 2 parallel universes. Again. The CFA continued as the officially recognised league, eventually joining FIFA and UEFA. The CTFA operated in international limbo, acknowledged by nobody except Turkish Cypriots, Turkey, and the bloke who printed the league tables. In 1960, Cyprus gained independence. The British, who had by now a strong track record of leaving former dependencies completely and utterly stable, handed over formal control to the new Cypriot government, minus 2 sovereign military bases, just in case they fancied hosting an FA Cup semi-final in the Mediterranean. Politically, post-independence Cyprus was an uneasy experiment in bicommunal governance. The 1960 constitution shared power between the majority Greek and minority Turkish Cypriots, at least in theory. As early as 1963, President Bakarios proposed constitutional amendments that Turkish Cypriots considered a power grab. Intercommunal violence broke out. Turkish Cypriots withdrew from government positions and retreated into enclaves. The UN sent in peacekeepers, the British watched on, pondering where they went wrong. Again. In July 1974, a coup engineered by Greek nationalists triggered Turkey's invasion of Cyprus. The north of the island was swiftly occupied, and what followed was a bloody conflict, mass displacement, and the creation of the Green Line, a demilitarized buffer zone that splits the island, and indeed its capital, in two. And as always, football mirrored the reality. Many clubs became refugee clubs. CFA teams based in the north, including Famagustas Anorthosis and Nea Salamina, as well as CTFA teams in the south, such as Paphos's Baf Uker Urdu, found themselves without a home. Anorthosis Famagusta moved to Larnaca. They kept the name Famagusta out of defiance, nostalgia, and possibly because it would have been a nightmare to reprint the fixture list. Nea Salamina followed a similar path. Originally founded by leftist members expelled from Anorthosis, they too resettled in Larnaca. Every Famagusta derby since 1974 has taken place in exile, which is a bit like holding the old firm in Taunton. In the north, Turkish Cypriot football carried on under the CTFA, but with all the international recognition of a pirate radio station. FIFA and UEFA maintained a no-entry policy for Turkish Cypriot clubs into competitive football, officially anyway. Unofficially for a time, Turkish Cypriot football teams were able to play international friendlies. In 1977, a Turkish Cypriot 11 hosted Turkey's national B team. Northern Cyprus even participated in the Islamic Games of 1980. Despite not being an independent state, the Turkish Cypriot team lined up against full national sides from Muslim countries. Then, in 1983, the Turkish Cypriot North unilaterally declared independence as the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. A move condemned by all in the international community, except for, you've guessed it, Turkey. FIFA, which had until then quietly allowed some contact with the outside world, now enforced a strict sports embargo. The CTFA was extra not recognised, and no FIFA member nation could play matches against Northern Cypriot teams. The CTFA have attempted multiple times to break this footballing embargo. In 1987, they officially applied to join FIFA, but as they weren't a recognised country, FIFA said no. Undeterred and showing no fear of rejection, unlike me in my early 20s, they tried again in 1988. Unsurprisingly, FIFA said no. Again. Oh well, plenty more international footballing governing bodies in the sea. In 1996, they applied to join the new Federations Board, an umbrella for teams not affiliated with FIFA. And, in 2006, their national team, which technically doesn't exist, won the FIFI Wild Cup, a tournament for unrecognised states, that one bloke from Sealand, and Jesus Christ, what is that? Back in the CFA, Greek Cypriot clubs rebounded. The game slowly modernised and gradually became more professional, thanks in many ways by their access to European football and international funding via UEFA development programmes. However, the most passionate and problematic rivalries still continue to run on the fumes of political ideology. Chief among them was the Nicosia derby between Apoel and Ammonia, or the Derby of the Eternal Enemies as it was dramatically known as. Not to be confused with the other Derby of the Eternal Enemies, Olympiakos and Panathinaikos, nor the other Derby of the Eternal Enemies, Autobots versus Decepticons. And this is the contrast that we find ourselves with today. On one hand, you have the CFA, which is very much part of the worldwide footballing community, and on the other hand, you have the CTFA, which finds itself in a form of footballing limbo. Despite successes on the pitch, such as Apoel's Champions League run in 2012, football in the Republic of Cyprus is still very much haunted by the island's past, partly down to historical conflicting political ideologies and the continued occupation in the north of the island. Despite this, there are signs to give cause for optimism. In 2005, Nea Salamina played a friendly against Yenençami Adelen, a Turkish Cypriot team from Nicosia. It was the first time in 50 years that clubs from both communities had shared a pitch. In 2019, Nea Salamin were at it again in another cross-community game, featuring Magusa Turk Goju, played in Pila, one of the only mixed villages left on the island. Didier Drogba even showed up as an ambassador, presumably unaware that he'd just become the most famous athlete to visit Pila since, ever really. In 2013, FIFA facilitated an agreement between the CFA and CTFA. The idea? Bring Turkish Cypriot football under the CFA umbrella, ending the sporting embargo. It was signed in Zurich, hailed as a breakthrough, but then immediately filed away next to other utopian projects. Cypriot football is complicated, tragic, defiant, and deeply human. In many ways, it mirrors the island itself. One day, maybe they'll have a proper Famagusta derby in Famagusta. One day, maybe we'll have a unified Cypriot league. Maybe one day Russian investment will rapidly take a team from obscurity to league champions. Oh wait, this has already happened. Twice, you say? Should probably do a video on that.